everyone. Welcome back to our podcast, Culture and Coffee, a deep dive into how culture shapes our personality. Our topic of the day is mating strategies. This one was also part of woke culture, but we just really wanted to make sure that it got the time it deserved, so we gave it its own episode.
I agree, yeah. I feel like woke culture is just like a huge thing, and I feel like that's why we split it up into like three different episodes.
Yeah.
Because it's just like there's so many things that you can talk about and then go so much in depth that I feel like we could like really reach every single like corner and crevice of this culture.
I don't know if I like the way you worded that.
Okay.
I'm a little.
So mating strategies.
So there's I know there's the fast strategy and the slow strategy. And fast strategy does stem from an unstable childhood environment, because it's less emphasis on chastity.
Yeah. So basically, the fast strategy is that you quickly get into and leave relationships. I'd say this is more of today's like hookup culture. Almost could be linked to this. Oh, punch in the mic.
Or
Sorry,
microphone.
Mike. And then the slow strategy is like you're waiting to like get into a relationship to make sure you're with the right person. You're waiting to maybe even like have sex because making sure it's the right person. You know,
because I feel like when you have a stable childhood environment, it's like your parents can be like, you know, like I'm not saying that to have a stable childhood environment, your parents have to be together, but it definitely does help to like demonstrate to the child that like, hey, like, you know, two people together a long time. It's like I put emphasis on like, oh, like you can find one mate, basically.
the like sanctity of
Well,
marriage.
that's like, because like saying unstable isn't necessarily a bad thing, right?
Oh no,
it's just saying that like, oh, either your parents are like divorced, or they dated around, or you moved a lot as a child. Like that's considered unstable too. Where it's like, oh, if you were constantly on the move, like you're from a military family, right?
Yeah,
you were talking about how you moved all the time. Technically, even if it's not a bad thing, that is still considered a unstable childhood because you didn't live because you weren't like stable in one spot. That's all that that's all that.
I mean, the only thing that stable I had was just my family, which was very helpful, by the way. Like I feel like thankfully my family was just like by my side the entire time. But I agree. Actually, I'm actually glad you brought that up because I was like, it's always affected me. Like I feel like more like I don't know. Yes, it's a great thing as well, but it also could be like, it's hard to make like, oh my god, lasting friendships because it's like for me, it's like I kind of rush into like friendships and then I'll like give it my all and then I'm like, oh, I'm leaving in 2 years anyway. But then I don't leave, and I've been here for like 8 years, I think.
You're like, hey.
I'm like, wait, so like when am I moving? You know, my dad retired here in Texas, by the way.
I have lived in the same house since I was 3 months old. And, like, both my parents are married. And I feel like that kind of reflects on, like, my relationships. Like, I did not date anyone until I was 17. And I started dating this boy, and I'm still with him today. And, like, I'm like, I will marry this man. So I feel like that just, like, really, like, reflects into, like, how, like,
I love that.
The, like, slow strategy.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Talk about the opposite. Like, you're like, not to get too, like, trauma dumpy. But, yeah, I kind of grew up in like I guess like a more like unstable, not traditional like home. It's just been like my mom and I, and my dad wasn't really like that present in my like formative years, like when I was actually like growing to be a person. And I think that kind of goes into like a fast strategy for me personally. I was in like 5th grade when I started my period.
Yeah, which has been linked to.
Yes,
that was something. That was something that we did.
And I think just like having to like grow up, kind of like faster in
a
way, and just like placing that more emphasis on like independent and stuff. Just trained my body almost. It was really crazy to like go back and like look at that and like actually think about it
like that. Especially because like when you think it's like you think it's nothing, and then you go to these types of things like these types of classes and you're like, oh,
like that can actually mean something.
There's a reason for that. You know, like, I think that's really cool, especially for stuff like you where you're like, oh, like, you know, you kind of thought it was weird but you didn't think too much about it, and now you're like, oh, well, there's a reason.
Like that could be a possible reason. Like same like I had like I had like a stable relationship with my family, like stable like parents, I guess. And so I had my period like when I was in 9th grade. So I feel like it's just kind of like kind of crazy to see like I don't know like
the difference.
The
Yeah.
differences, yeah. Especially for like stuff like that, because you wouldn't really think it would affect stuff like that.
Oh, yeah,
right?
for sure.
But then it does, and you're like, oh, what is that?
And it was just crazy to me because growing up, I mean, being a 5th grade year in elementary, like my mom taught me about that stuff early,
Yeah.
but I didn't expect it
Yeah.
almost, and like a lot of my friends weren't
Yeah.
experiencing the same things. One of my
Yeah.
best friends at that age grew up kind of similarly like that. Like parents were together, all sisters, like just a very good thing. And
Yeah.
she started again later, like in 8th or 9th grade.
Yeah.
And it was just funny because I wanted to start later and she wanted to start earlier.
Yeah.
so.
I wanted to start earlier too because when I was in the ballet, I'm always like, oh, they were like talking about tampons. I'm like, I don't need those, but like, give me one. You know what I mean? Just for like the fun of it.
And like I don't know, slow strategies are normally like have an emphasis on chastity, which is like obviously like no sex basically. We'll just get down to it. But then like the earlier periods being linked to fast strategy, like if you have your period earlier, then you can get pregnant earlier.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So it's like kind of the
So
opposite
true.
of like the
Yeah.
chastity.
Yeah.
You start experiencing all those like hormones and like
Yeah.
puberty like
Yeah.
very early.
Yeah.
I remember being in middle school and being like, what is going on?
Well, it's
Yeah.
funny too because like I didn't think about it until like just now really, where it was like I went to school with a lot of girls like, and they started like 5th, 6th, like 5th, 6th grade, and it's like thinking back, it's like yeah, they didn't have super stable home lives, right?
Yes, yeah.
And like they showed all the stuff that we're talking about, and I'm like I just never thought about it,
Yeah,
like we
for
just
sure.
kind of were like, oh, it's fine, but it's like no, yeah, there is a connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I knew this girl, actually, like, just think about it also now, but, like, she also had a period in 5th grade, and she was, like, part of the foster system. So she, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
that's
yeah,
just,
so
like,
that's like negative both.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but it's definitely, like, I was like, wow, like, just, I think that is super cool that those are even linked to begin
Yeah,
with.
like it's
Yeah.
a really interesting link.
I know we had discussed it earlier. I think you touched on like the purity
Oh
Like,
my
wait,
god,
yes,
the
purity
purity
culture.
chastity
balls, or
balls.
whatever.
Well,
yeah. So that's like linked to like that would be
The
a stable,
slow. Yeah.
like a slow strategy type thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like because I grew up. I grew up Catholic, which is very heavy in like purity culture. It's very like it's not like the most extreme you could be, but like growing up, it's like you were taught, oh well, the best contraception is just to not have sex, right?
Yeah,
Like,
abstinence.
like
Yeah,
abstinence, stuff
abstinence.
like that. And yeah, like I didn't know anyone personally that did it because my hometown was a bit more like kind of like lenient on it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's like like you hear these stories of people being like, oh yeah, like I have a purity ring, right? Or it's like we talk about it in my class, like whenever I would go to like church classes as a kid,
Yes.
they talk about it and be like, oh, some people have purity rings, and I'm like, that's crazy, right? It's like
Yeah.
You like propose to by your father,
By
saying,
your
like,
dad, yeah, where
you're
it's like,
gonna
oh,
keep
making a
virginity.
vow.
or it's
Yeah.
like or like like father in some cases, but also I know that if it's like a
Religion.
yeah,
It's like to God.
it's like to God. Like you're going like,
Okay,
I
true.
giving my purity up to God or
Yeah.
whatever until I get married and have a husband or et cetera, right? And so it's like I think that tie is really interesting too.
Yeah, and I feel like that only furthers like, because like you save your virginity for the person you marry, and usually that's in like religious people like are really heavy in that, and religious
Mhm.
people like also like are heavy on like the sanctity of marriage, and like they don't believe in divorce.
Yeah.
So then they
Yeah.
stay together, and then it like furthers the cycle, and their children will have the slow strategy and like
Yeah.
like save themselves.
Yeah, so it's like it's two very very different things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting when you think about it, especially like in the South, because I think both fast and slow tracks are very prevalent in the
Mhm.
South, just because of like the general like statistics of it versus the religious aspect,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like you have people who are highly religious, but they've been divorced, right? Or vice versa, where
Mhm.
they're not religious and they've been in a relationship for
since forever.
since forever, right? It's like you
Yeah.
have both of those because they intertwine so much, and in well, Texas I know, but like just the U.S. in general,
Yeah.
I think, especially especially like Midwest and stuff like that, where purity culture is like a
Oh,
huge
yeah.
deal.
Like Utah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mormons.
yeah, Mormons. Where like purity culture is this huge thing where it's like but you still do see this in like this, no, what's the word?
Intertwined.
Yeah, intertwining of them both.
Yeah.